All right, hello again. This is Jeff Scott of Blackhawk Technical College. I had been going through Chapter 5 and everything was going swimmingly. I went in there, talked a little bit about Android virtual devices, created my virtual device, got the screen up, did everything we were supposed to do in here, followed these steps. Everything was cool until I tried to start the emulator. All right, so I got to that point, and when I tried to start my emulator, it came up. I don't know where I put that. With an error message, the one that's right here. It said NAND. Could not write file, D colon, etc., all that stuff. And then it said no space left on device. In addition, as you've seen, I've got this persistent error that stays up here that says low disk space on a Android Studio system directory partition, D colon / user / jscott / dot Android Studio 1.3 / whoops, that should have been / system. So I'm going to attempt to talk to John Wanda and or Terry Prindle and or Adrian Sanchez and see if I can get that fixed. Long story short or short story long, depending on your opinion, I can't go through Chapter 5 anymore because I don't have the emulator. All right. So since I don't have that, I don't want to go through Chapter 6 either because that's testing it on a physical device. I'd rather run it on the emulator first, make sure that it works, and then test it on the physical device. All right, so I'm going to jump into Chapter 7, and that'll be the last chapter that I do today. The basics of the Android Studio Code Editor. All right, this is a fairly long chapter for this book. It starts on page 65 on our book, and it goes all the way through page 78 of the book, or 76. So it's about 10 or 11 pages. Now, notice that the author says this is not an exhaustive view of the features of the Android Studio Editor. All right? And I'd already grabbed that chapter that I found here for you. Oh, that I've saved already for you. But this developing with Android Studio, I don't know how good it is or is not. All right? But I'm grabbing that and copying that over to the P drive. 152, 156 Android. Spring 2016. So that's now out there along with that Android Studio tutorial that I found online. So that's out there along with this IntelliJ DEA reference card, which has got shortcuts for using different things in the editor. So you now have all that stuff out there. As I find more stuff, I will put that out there as well. But again, I'm going to go through what they talk about in terms of the editor on these 10 or 11 pages in the guise of walking through the actual editor in here. All right? So, the editor, as they mentioned there, is the big spot in the main part of the window here. Now you can see it's got information in here. It shows you what our app currently looks like. It's got our palette in here. It's, of course, got this message that won't go away. And it's got our properties in here. And if I switch over to here, it's got all my code. All right, so we've looked at this already. So I want to talk about the different things that are in here. Some of this is a little bit of review error, but I don't care. All right. So the first thing that they show here are about 5 different things in Figure 7.1 that's on page 66. Starting with what you see in here, and I've got to, again, close this. What you see in here are my document tabs. So if I want to switch to anything that's in here, I can click the document tabs. All right. So Android Studio is capable of holding multiple files opening for editing at one time. You can switch back and forth in multiple ways. I showed you what I consider to be the easiest way to switch All right. This area in here that we talked about earlier, that's called our gutter area. It's used by the editor to display informational icons and controls. All right. And again, I'm not going to go through those right now. We will look at those as we're going through stuff in more detail. Okay. You'll notice if I come over here, they're showing some of the things over here, and here I can set breakpoints. All right, and they say line numbers are switched off by default, but may be enabled by right-clicking in the gutter area and selecting Show Line Numbers. So if that makes it easier for you, please do. All right. On the bottom of the screen is our status bar area. As they say, it's actually part of the main window as opposed to the editor. It does contain some information about the currently active editing session. This information includes the current position of the cursor in terms of the line number you're on, etc. So you'll notice that's what they show in here. The encoding format that's being used, which is right here. Okay. Our editing area we've already talked about, so that's our code area in here, or the area that shows us the other stuff if we're in here. And then finally along the right here, we've got our validation and marker sidebar. Android Studio incorporates a feature referred to as on-the-fly code analysis. What's cool about this is if I go back to my code here, all right? So let's say I come in here and I start typing some stuff in and I remove this, all right? Well, what it's starting to show me over here is, well, it says at least at a minimum I need a semicolon. But if I put in a semicolon, notice it's still, I get this, and I get the light bulb. When I click here, it's like remove braces. Well, in other words, it says it doesn't know how to fix the problem. But if I come through here and I type in true, and I think that's what was there before, it goes away. All right, so the sidebar will show over here where it finds any errors as we're keying information in, if you misspell something or whatever. All right, it is possible to split the window, editor window. By default, the editor window will display a single panel showing the content of the currently selected file. A particularly useful feature when you have multiple code files is the ability to split the editor into multi-panes. To split the editor, right-click on a File tab within the editor and select either Split Vertically or Split Horizontally. You can see I've got a bunch of stuff open there. The orientation may be changed with a change splitter. It says repeat these things to unsplit. This time select the unsplit option. Window splitting may be used to display different files or to provide different windows onto the same file. All right. Code completion. The Android Studio Code Editor has a considerable amount of built-in knowledge on the Java programming syntax and the classes, as well as knowledge of your own code base. As code is typed, it'll try to give you IntelliSense, they mentioned there. Okay? So the author gives you an example. He comes over here, and I guess I should have read first on how to remove all these. Close. can always drag. No, I can't even drag. I'll get it back eventually. I'm not going to worry about it, okay? But the author has you come over here, and someplace in here, yeah, there you go. We want to go to our code here, okay? All right. So as he mentions, when you're in your code and you start to type something in here, he gives an example. He comes to the onCreate. All right, and he comes down here where he's got all of his stuff here, and he says, as an example, str. And you'll notice it brings up help. All right, so if I want the one that's shown right there to be the one that I keep, I can press the Enter key. Or I can keep typing, or I can arrow my way down in here to accept different ones. The Android editor also offers something that's called Smart Completion, which is invoked with Shift Control Space. All right. Code completion can be a matter of personal preference. All right. So it says Android Studio provides a high level of control over autocomplete settings. So we can, again, as we did before, go to File, Settings, and choose the Editor Code Completion. And I'm sure it's in here someplace, okay? But there's different settings that you've had. You've seen this stuff. We've done things similar to this before. All right, we've done things similar to this before in Eclipse. Okay, let me just cancel out of this. Wish I wouldn't have opened all this stuff because I've really uglied this thing up, but it's all right. I wonder if I do a file and I close the project. All right, and now I come and open the project up of what it'll look like, if it'll revert back to the way I wanted it to look. And of course, it didn't. All right. I'll figure it out. I'm not going to worry about it. They mention that there's also statement completion in here on page 71. So the author says if we come into our code down here and we start typing, and we type in, for example, protected void my method, and we put in paren and hit enter. They say there that it automatically has the editor put in semicolons, or I'm sorry, curly braces. Well, mine didn't, and it must be because of the way I've got this set up. How about if I put in one? Notice it put in the other one. Okay? All right. Oh, maybe it's because I spelled protect and not protected. So let's see. Protected my method. Paren. Hit enter. Still didn't put them in. All right, but there they are. Okay. And I need void there. So let's try it one more time. Protected void my method. Okay. All right. It's also possible to ask the editor to provide information about argument parameters. With the cursor positioned between the brackets of a method call, you can do a Control P to display the parameters that are known to be accepted by the method. And they give an example in here where they say string my button text equals my string, and I'm going to have to create that string, so otherwise I think I'm going to get an error. String my string equals hello. All right, so string button text equal my string, oops, dot replace all, paren, and then if we come in here and do a control P, it shows us what we're supposed to be putting in there. Kind of cool. In other words, there's some help that's been provided for you to try to make, as you're keying stuff in, to try to make it as easy as possible. In addition to completing code, under certain conditions, the editor can also generate code for you. If I do an Alt insert, Alt and then hit the insert, this is how, again, we can put in our getters and setters, etc., and some other stuff that you see in here. All right, I'm just going to leave that the way it is. Hit escape to make it go away. Code folding, you know what code folding is. If I click here, I can hide some of my code that's being shown. Okay, that's on 73, 74. Finally, on 75 and 76, they talk about quick documentation lookup. So I can take my mouse and, as an example, I can get context-sensitive help. All right, so I can take my mouse and, for example, I'm going to put it over here over, let's try Boolean. All right, and I'm going to do a Control Q. See if that comes up with anything. Well, that didn't display anything, so let's try it here. Try a Control Q. All right, and notice it's grabbing information for me. Now that's a lot nicer than the way it was set up in Eclipse, where it just automatically, when you took your mouse and put it on something, it just popped up. Okay. There's a code reformatting as we finish up this chapter. In general, it says, Android Studio will automatically format code for you in terms of indenting, spacing, and nesting. But the editor also provides a source code reformatting feature that, when selected, will automatically reformat code to match the prevailing code style. And to reformat such source code, you can press Control Alt L. All right. And that should, it didn't, but according to that, it should display the reformat code dialog shown in figure 716. Okay, that's it for this chapter. Really feel bad because I know exactly where I wanted to get today, and now, of course, I'm not going to do that. Just because of the fact that I am having problems with the emulator and with space considerations. So I'm going to come back, try to see if I can get that fixed, and then come back tomorrow and continue on. That's it for now, though.